First up, we have American Rare Earths, a returning company to Australia Investment Day, who was here last year, and we look forward to hearing all about their progress. American Rare Earths trades on the ASX under the symbol ARR, and on the OTCQX market under the symbols AMRRY and ARRNF.
Okay, hi everyone. Great to be here. I've come up from Florida. Jeepers, it's very loud. Come up from Florida. I got to say the weather was better in Florida, but here we are. So American Rare Earths, it's actually a very simple story in what is a fairly complicated backdrop and complicated market. We are a US play. We are US based, US assets, and ultimately will be a part of the long-term strategic supply chain for rare earths, heavy and light, for the United States. The main deposit, which is in Wyoming, is, I come from the copper gold sector. I'm not a rare earths person per se. Spent a long time in developing, running copper gold assets. Our asset I liken to a big copper porphyry. It is low grade, it is really, really big, it is very contiguous, very simple to mine. The need for rare earths is really interesting. One of the things I've found coming into this sector is that different to copper, different to, gold's its own thing, silver, we're at the start of something. So if we look, there's defense, there's medical, there's energy. Humanoid robots are the really interesting one. If we look at a humanoid robot, there's really three parts to it. There's the brain, which is AI. There's the sensors, which is Panasonic, Samsung. It's the ability to see and transmit image. And then it needs to move. And that's where magnets come in. Without magnets, it doesn't move. So if we think, and I think, that humanoid robotics will make life easier for us as humans, then likely they'll be ubiquitous in the next 10 to 15 years. Much like we all rode horses and it went pretty well, and then cars come along and we figured out that made our life easier, and they became ubiquitous. So I think the hard part of this industry is really understanding the forward demand curve. As in, will it be a normal forward demand curve, or will it be affected by real disruption, things like humanoid robots? So just on to us a little bit more. We know Wyoming is a great place to operate, number 4 in the world on the Fraser Institute. Great infrastructure. I've worked on a range of projects all over the world, in the Middle East, in South America, Africa. And when you build a project, infrastructure is king. Do you have rail? Do you have road? Do you have power? If you don't have those things, you can have a fantastic deposit, but it's really, really hard to actually execute on that deposit. So one of the reasons I really like this company when I came into it is, do you have an ore body? Yes, tick. Can you actually execute? Do you have infrastructure? Yes. So for me, that made this really, really interesting. The other part of Wyoming, the first part of our operation is on Wyoming State land. Wyoming is a very mature permitting jurisdiction, lots of energy and natural resources projects, a very defined and predictable permitting process that we're working through. This deposit, sort of a little bit more than 2.5 billion tons of ore, which means that depending on where the cutoff grade goes, depending on what the price book is for rare earths moving forward, this mine sits between the sort of the mid hundreds of years into the mid 400s of years of mine life, and it's open at depth and open laterally. We've got folks who want to go drill more holes. I struggle with that because I'm not sure what we'll get from making it bigger right now. Allanite, really interesting. When I first came into the company, I have a mineral processing background, but I got talking to the people, and frankly, my eyes glazed over in sort of under 3 minutes because it's complicated. So what I did is I worked through, as I do, to try to just simplify it. Why can we process allanite and others can't? The other thing I've learned in this industry is it's like Star Trek. There's more odd words in the rare earths industry than there is in any other kind of mining. So if we were a gold or copper mine, we would say this was a refractory ore body and it had oxidized, but we're in rare earths. So what's happened is called metamictization. But essentially, the crystalline structure of the allanite and the radionuclides, so the uranium, thorium, it's so old from the Cambrian eon, 1.5 billion years or so, that they've all broken down, and they've taken with it the crystalline structure of the allanite. So again, if we're in copper gold, we'd say it's oxidized, but we're not, so it's done something more complicated. But the result is the same. It's made the ore very amenable to be processed. We didn't do anything. We're just fortunate. This particular allanite has that. Now, when I come into the company, my idea was, listen, if no one else has done this and we figured out how to do it, we should patent that. The news I got was bad in that we can't patent that because we're just using existing technology that people have been using in the mining industry for years. We're just fortunate to have an ore body that is amenable to that. So the bad news is I can't patent it, but the good news is I can't patent it. The next thing we did is just upgrade the grade. Again, an analog to a big copper porphyry. It is really big and really low grade, so it's around 0.4. We then do some gravity and mag and bring it up to around 4%, which is more normal in the industry. And then we worked out using magnesium oxide, again, been around for a very long time, drops out 99.9% of the impurities, but leaves the rare earths behind and allows it to be fed through a fairly standard hydromet facility. So it's a little bit of a boring process, but it works. To just look at this thing again really simply, it's a really, really big deposit. It's the largest rare earth deposit in the United States by far. There are very large resources like this in places like Greenland, none in the United States. But going back to my point before, you need rail, you need road, you need energy. So they've got some catching up to do. It's in the right place. It's in Wyoming. The first 25, 30 years on Wyoming State land. From there, we'll build this out. One of the things we will be doing this year is I've commissioned what I call a whole of property assessment. Very much we've been focused on the first 25, 30 years of mine life. I need to understand the full hundreds of years potential, where we would go next, why, how we'll get there, how that interacts with the infrastructure, et cetera. So again, to set this up as a long life anchor asset in the domestic United States. It's a good time to be in the rare earths industry, I think. It's topical. The US at a policy level wants to create a secure supply chain within the domestic United States. There's a lot going on in Brazil, in South Africa, in other places. I think I am very comfortable not being a BRICS country when I'm working through trying to create a secure supply chain within the domestic United States. Funding is an interesting question for this particular commodity. We're having different discussions with different US agencies. Again, this is a fairly simple deposit and it is strategic to the US, and that is something that we're working through at the moment. We have had previous discussions with the Exim Bank and we see great support from the great state of Wyoming. The production that will come from this mine will be truly long-term for the United States. So again, this gives you some frame of reference, but the Cowboy State Mine is in the bottom. The rest of the deposit moves to the north. One of the things, I think Nick's here with me today from the great state of Wyoming, who's joined us. One of the things Nick's looking at is tailings, because this mine is really interesting. The tailings are basically sand. So we spend a massive amount, well, we spend energy and time mining rock, crushing, grinding, turning it into a very contiguous sand that is completely inert. So we're looking at different ways we can leverage that within the state of Wyoming. This sand could make tiles, it could make glass, it could make all kinds of things. And my thinking is, one, I want to recover the water, because in today's world, water is king and we have to be good stewards of water always. And two, we've spent all this energy and time creating something, we should use it if we can. So Nick's leading the work around, let's not, if we can, let's not have tailings, let's actually use what we've created, which is, again, I think what we all should be doing today to make the world more sustainable if you've used energy to make something. We have both heavy and light rare earths, which is a little bit uncommon in the United States. So NdPr, neodymium, praseodymium, there's those crazy Star Trek words. The light rare earths, we also have terbium, dysprosium, really importantly, samarium. Samarium is a very interesting one because it's used in defense applications, in very high-tech defense applications. It has a material resistance to temperature and pressure. And there isn't much of it used in the world today because you can't get it. We have quite a bit of samarium. We'll be creating a separate stream and we'll be producing samarium as a product. We also have yttrium, which again is a really odd word, but we will, we're working out how all these different streams will work. Much of these heavy rare earths specifically are being largely controlled by China, and it is in the interests of US continued technology dominance to create and produce these in the domestic United States. This year is a big year, 2026. The PFS will be done mid-year, early July. We will be doing the 400-metre batten change, 4 by 100-metre relay batten change to the FS in 2026. The permit to mine will be submitted in 2026. We've already got a permit to do a test mine, and we've mined around 4,000 tonnes of 60,000 tonnes. And then we're working through at the moment using some quasi-government facilities that already exist in the United States and Canada to produce some pre-production concentrate, including, depending on how we configure that, most likely including some heavies, samarium, terbium, dysprosium in 2027 at a test level that will allow us to discuss with our downstream partners. As a company, where we want to go is to integrate into the mine-to-magnet supply chain rather than be a simple separated rare earth oxide producer and sell into the market. I've talked about, we've had good discussions with Exim. They're very supportive, and the great state of Wyoming is really supportive. The other thing we're doing with them at the moment, go back to tailings, is we had a $100,000 grant that we matched to work with the University of Wyoming on alternative uses for our tailings product that shouldn't even be called tailings. It's engineered sand. So that is another really good initiative that's going forward. So the University of Wyoming is a really good partner for us. And Nick is the University of Wyoming graduate that makes things even easier. This company, from an investment perspective, no one really cares about hundreds of years of mine life. The US government does, but from an investor perspective, that's a long tail. So one of the real challenges with this is valuation. How do you do that? You end up with long life production that on paper has absolutely no value, which is just wrong. So that's one of the things we're working through. I've never come across a mine with this kind of mine life. And there aren't very many. So we've got some work to do around how we actually value this asset. We also have some projects, one in Arizona, La Paz, one in Nevada, Searchlight, and another one in Wyoming that are interesting. We are doing some work on the project La Paz in Arizona, but actually not on rare earths. So I've had a look at that. I think it's interesting from a rare earth perspective, but with Halleck Creek, I've sort of got my hands full on the rare earth development front. But we are going to take a look at La Paz because we're in a prolific copper district, copper gold district. We did a ton of work there, a ton of sampling, we've done drilling, but we've only ever really looked for rare earths. So we're actually going to we're not going to do more work. We may do some mag, but other than that, we're just going to go back and we're going to put have a wider field of vision and see if there's other minerals there that we haven't really identified yet. So I guess just to sum up, this is a generational resource that should be the rare earth anchor for the United States, heavy and light rare earths in Wyoming, domestic United States, a state with great infrastructure. The process I've been through is relatively straightforward, and it's really driven by us being fortunate having an allanite ore body that has broken down, is amenable to us processing it. My job as a simple mining guy, not a technical rare earths guy, is just to develop the plan to execute a mine, which is what I will do. And we will, as we step forward now, work through how we properly integrate into that mine to magnet supply chain, which is where I see the long-term value for a rare earths company. So again, we're a fairly boring rare earths company, but that's American Rare Earths.
Thanks, Mark. If anybody in the audience has any questions, just put your hand up. I'll come over to the microphone. That way Mark can hear you as well as the people online as well.
Can you explain a little bit why you have two stock symbols? What's the difference?
Why we have to what, I'm sorry?
Stock symbols. OTC symbol.
OTC.
Yeah. Is that like a Berkshire Hathaway A share, B share is the same class of share, or what?
We have two five-letter tickers, which is one of them has the F as a foreign, and the other is the ADR, I believe. But other than that, I'm not sure. I'm going to say I don't know.
American Rare Earths has, you said, a level 1 ADR, which trades under AMRRY,
yeah,
and a foreign ARRNF. Any other questions from the audience before we go with the online group? Yep.
Thank you so much. Can you explain allanite? How important is that for magnets?
Allanite is just one of the hosts for rare earth elements. There's there's mineral sands, there's ionic clays, there's different hosts. Allanite is one of them. Traditionally, allanite has been difficult to process. As I said, in my more simple mining speak, it is like a refractory gold. It's like where you've got gold encapsulated in sulfides or encapsulated in carbon or whatever it may be. And you then have to unlock that. So traditionally, you've got this allanite. It contains the rare earths, but they are encapsulated in these crystalline structures. Ours, again, in the copper-gold equivalent, has oxidized, but in rare earths equivalent is this metamictization. But basically, the radioactive nuclides, uranium, thorium, have broken down over 1.5 billion years, and they've taken the crystalline structure with them, which has then opened up the allanite to be able to be effectively processed. So your reagents can get at it, whereas if it isn't broken down, the problem is getting your reagents to interact with the rare earth elements is almost impossible. It's very, very difficult. Whereas once your structure's broken down, now when you process it, your rare earth elements can be readily interacted with by the different reagents that you're using, sulfuric acid, etc.
And I think we'll move to the online forum. Any questions there?
Yes, Mark, we got a couple questions from our online audience. I just want to combine two. One investor is asking for more color around the permitting process in Wyoming, and like what are the critical paths and potential obstacles? And another investor is asking, is there a way to speed up production before 2030?
I'm going to answer the second one first. So I think production would be 2031, late 2030 into 2031. Again, having built stuff, you've got to commission it, you've got to get yourself into commercial production. If we started construction in 2029, so end of 2030, bleeding into 2031. Sorry, what was the first question again? It was
just if you can speak to the permitting process in Wyoming.
Permitting. The thing with permitting, I permitted all over the world for some time. One of the things that reported to me in the 12 years I was with Barrick was permitting. And what you want with permitting is you want predictability. All permitting is complicated. And the other thing that a lot of non-mining people don't understand is that there's not one permit. There's an array of permits, air, water, then you have socioeconomic assessments that take place. There's a myriad of permits. So we have brought in a really, really good guy, Lucas, who has just successfully permitted the CK Gold Mine in Wyoming, the first hard rock mine to be permitted in the state of Wyoming, I think, since the 70s. So Lucas understands the process, knows the process, has just been through the process. And the thing with permitting is you don't want to rush it. You need to methodically move through the requirements of the state and make sure you cross the T's, dot the I's, and then you get to the end where you get your permit. And the thing with permits is you need to obtain the permit, which is step number one and has a big process. But then the really important bit is you've got to retain the permit. And you retain the permit by making sure that you've got all the right processes, do everything right. You're really worrying about your water, you're worrying about the air, you're worrying about the socioeconomics all of the time. And that's how you retain your license to operate and your permit. So I do not want to speed up permitting. It's already pretty fast in the state of Wyoming. I want to get it right. And that's what we're doing.
Mark, there was another question, is if you can speak to the status of any potential offtake agreements or strategic partners?
I can't. We're in discussions with some really interesting people. One thing I've learned in this business is that we're not in the business of making magnets. I know how to build a mine. I know how to run an industrial facility, but magnet making is a particular expertise. So we will continue to be engaging in discussions with folks that we think we can have a really interesting relationship with, us providing the longest term supply available in the United States domestically, and someone who has the wherewithal and the forward-looking contracts in the magnet space.
One more came in, Mark, and they're asking you about your relation with Australia. Do you have any operations there, projects?
I was born there.
Okay, that counts.
And we're listed there. That's it.
If that's no other questions, really want to thank Mark Wall for being with us. Oh, one question here.
How different are these rare metals that you have compared to what the Chinese have?
The rare earth elements that are produced are the same. They're produced from a different host mineral, host rock. That's all. That's the only thing that's different. So it isn't, what comes out at the end is the same. What goes in at the start is different.
Thank you so much, Mark Wall, everybody.
Thank you.